Привit moi druzy. Hello, my friends. That phrase that I say, Привit moi druzy, actually means hello, my friends, in Ukrainian. I'm not Ukrainian, but I've tried to learn a little bit about the culture. What I want to talk about today is the subject of culture. In the last couple of videos, I talked about a number of different things like President Xi's trip to Russia, and I talked about the Republicans and what was going on between the cultural differences between the groups within the Republican Party. But culture applies whether you're dealing with a country or a company or a political party or a YouTube channel. And I'll give you a number of examples because I'm trying to help you in all these videos to understand context and what's really going on in certain contexts. So I'm going to help you with understanding how culture works, and then we'll go to some broader implications. But in the meantime, I want to start here. Yesterday, I was talking about which Republicans support Ukraine, and I said something that illustrates my point. So I'm only showing you what I showed you to talk about how culture works. So let's listen to this little clip real quick. Talked about here Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene showing video of them saying what they were saying. I'm going to put this topic to rest at least for a while, and I don't engage in anything that's not related to Ukraine. Okay, so I'm just going to say that right up front. And by the way, please, if you see comments and you've been around on my channel for some time, just gently remind people if they just going into a diatribe on either side. And I almost always correct the conservatives. I usually ignore the liberals who will go into a diatribe. But I generally chastise conservatives and say, this isn't what we're about. We're here to support Ukraine. Okay, so please help me with that. I'd appreciate it very much. Okay, so here's what I... So that's what I said yesterday. And somebody was somewhat offended by that. Oh, so this is only for, actually a few people were, oh, this is only for conservatives then, huh? And no, that's not what I was saying at all. What I was saying was, please help me police this. Now, we've done this before fairly successfully when we have a Russian troll type that come on here, and you can tell when a troll is a troll because they start saying pro-Russian talking points. And if you've listened long enough, if you've been around my channel for some time, you've seen Fun with Russian State Media, that segment that I do sometimes, and you started to hear about these kinds of things. But when they start saying it, immediately I'll flag them and say, hey, look, you can have a contrary opinion. Now, this is part of the culture of this channel. You can have a contrary opinion. I welcome your ideas. But as soon as you're rude, I'm going to eject you. And I have the controls as the person who runs this particular channel to hide or remove that person. But that's the culture that I hope to establish here. I want to have a dialogue and understand how people are thinking. Now, most people from that side don't want to come and hear all the things that I'm having to say. So they self-select out. But the trolls, that's how they are. At any rate, what I was saying was, I want people to help me. Now, I don't have moderators, but to help me police so that we're civil and polite to each other. So I say, I will generally, when I hear a conservative say something to a liberal, that's somebody from my tribe. So I will say something to them much more readily. Usually, I'm like, if I have to, if they just keep going on about Trump this and Trump that and how he's the Antichrist and everything else, then I'll, look, please stop. If you are somebody who's been here for a while and within this channel, and you know me, you know what I'm trying to do here, unity about Ukraine, that's the culture that I'm trying to forge. Help me, if you're on the liberal side, police other liberals so that this doesn't break down. Because what we're trying to do is forge unity, and we forge unity by focusing on what we agree on, not about chastising the other party for being so desperately bad and evil and wicked and whatever else that you might think that they are. That doesn't help. So I'm asking for your help, and I'm sorry that I explained that poorly in that little section. But I'm trying to create that culture intentionally, and so I want your help. Now, here's the personal story that I was going to tell you about culture. Now, I saw this work, and this is why I'm asking, when I was in high school. I ran high school track for 3 years, and when I first started, just like anybody else, I didn't want to run necessarily every day. Oh, it's raining. Do we have to run? And I would complain about it. And then the seniors would correct me. I thought, well, that's odd. I mean, they would essentially say, get over it. We're running today because we ran every day. We ran the day before Christmas break, and then we ate cake, right? But I mean, that's how that was the culture. And my Coach Serrano, did a great job in creating a culture where the seniors knew what to expect, and then it trickled down to the juniors and sophomores and freshmen. And so we knew people got corrected real quick. And by the time I was a senior, when a new person came onto the track team and they started belly aching about it, get over yourself, we're running. Like that became the culture. But you have to actually establish a culture. Okay, so that's my personal story about culture. Now let's turn our attention to like a national type of culture. There's a marked difference between what Zelensky has done and the culture of Ukraine, and what Putin has done and the culture in Russia. So I've followed Zelensky since very early in the beginning of the war. I mean, when I heard I need ammunition, not a ride, I set out to write an ebook about Zelensky. And within 3 weeks, I had this book out. And for 4 months, I updated it weekly. It's on Amazon. It's free on Amazon Prime. And so you can go look that up. I read all of his speeches, every speech, every day for those 4 months. And I've intermittently read since then. But his focus on certain things is very different than the focus that you hear from Putin. I compared Putin's New Year's speech and Zelensky's New Year's speech, and just the disparity between what they said. Like, it sounded kind of similar, but the amount of times that Putin said "I," "me," or "my" as opposed to "we" and "our" and "us it paled. I mean, the amount of "we" and "our" and "us" paled in contrast to what Zelensky said, because he thought in different terms. There's a different culture. Zelensky's constantly telling people, we will prevail, we will survive. I want to thank you for all your efforts. We're going to make it. Russia will pay. And there's a culture that you can feel the nationalist spirit of Ukraine through his speeches. Zelensky's actions showing up in Bakhmut yesterday. I mean, it was just like he didn't have to do that. And he showed up in Bakhmut itself, where Putin, a little bit more risk averse. Now, I'm not going to get into the question of the body double or not, but Putin, let's say he was in Mariupol, let's say in the dead of night, surrounded by people who were actors pretending to be locals welcoming him. Now, there was a big difference between those two. And it speaks to his apathetic population that's willing to put up with the authoritarian dictator that he is, because there's a different culture in Russia than there is in Ukraine. And you can see the differences. And once you start thinking in terms of how to see culture, you'll see it everywhere. Culture is important. And Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's a popular saying in business literature. That means strategy we think is all important, but it's really not. Strategy, if the culture is strong enough, it's going to drive the strategy out. The best strategy that you might have is and you can see that culture in the differences between the way that Ukraine fights for their own freedom. They're not going to stop. You don't need to tell them to keep going, as opposed to the way the culture works in the Russian military, where a bad culture is handed down, and there's a cascading effect of, well, lying and corruption and these other things that maybe bad military doctrine and other things that are just, it's rooted very deeply, and it's going to be hard to root out. They have to lose on the battlefield because culture doesn't die easily. And so, just like in Japan and Germany, it wouldn't have died easily unless it was stamped out and interrupted and replaced with something. But once you see culture, you'll see it everywhere. Once you can see it, you will see it. And it accounts for much of what happens in a small context, in your own family, in your company, and in nations. So I hope that helps you understand the concept of culture. I know this is a little bit broader and not really as grounded, but now as you watch the news, think about culture. As you watch other videos, Jake Bro or Dennis or Anna or whoever it is that you're watching, think about how culture is affecting it, and you'll start to see it. All right. Thank you for your time. If you like this, give me a thumbs up. You can buy me a coffee if you want to support what I do. And if you want to support Ukraine directly, there's links down below to United 24, Samaritan's Purse, and others. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.